Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rogers Memorial Library. It's wonderful to have all of you here, and many of you are unfamiliar faces, and we extend a warm welcome to you as well. My name is Penny Wright. I'm in charge of adult programs here at the library, and we have thanks to go around. First of all, we want to thank Joe Shaw for moderating this event. And of course, our most heartfelt thanks go to our guest, the CNN anchor, part-time Southampton resident, Chris Cuomo. Who very graciously made the time, because we know he doesn't have the time, but he made the time to be here with us today. Thank you so much. It was just about a year ago that our friend and friendly neighbor, Joe Shaw, whom some of you know, the executive editor of the Press News Group, had the idea of beginning a series of roundtable events in which topics of local as well as national interest would be discussed. This was an idea that I had been interested in for a long time, so we had our first roundtable discussion last November about traffic. It was very successful. And then this time around, we had an inkling that journalism might be a timely topic, and we knew just where to go. Just a couple of words about our moderator, Joe Shaw. As I mentioned, he's the executive director of the Press News Group. They publish the Southampton Press, the East Hampton Press, and the website 27 East. Under his tenure, the Press newspapers have won hundreds of state awards, including dozens for general excellence. The National Newspaper Association has picked the Press as one of the 5 best community newspapers of its size in the U.S. numerous times over the past 15 years, including last year. A native of Pittsburgh, go Steelers. That's right.
And penguins.
And penguins.
Come on, how happy.
Joe has been on the East End for more than 19 years. He lives with his wife, the photo editor who is in this room, Dana Shaw. Hello, Dana, and thank you for being here. And they also live with their cats, Oscar and Felix. Does this tell you something about their household? Please welcome Joe Shaw.
I appreciate that, and it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Cuomo. Everybody knows Chris Cuomo, but I'll tell you a little bit about him. He is the co-anchor for New Day, which is the morning show on CNN in the mornings. He's a graduate of Fordham University School of Law. You also received an undergraduate degree from Yale, which I should mention. You have been nominated for and won just about every major journalism award that a TV journalist can win. His back resume includes time at Fox, CNBC, ABC News. He was the youngest correspondent ever at 2020. It's quite a resume. You were also one of People's Most Beautiful People in 1997, which surprised me because I don't see you at the reunion party. He is the son of the former governor, Mario Cuomo, a new bridge being named after him, as I understand.
Big news.
And the brother of the current governor, Andrew Cuomo, Chris Cuomo. So Penny touched on it a little bit. We scheduled this sit-down months ago, and timing is everything in life. We had no way of knowing that the timing of this event would so perfectly line up with the title, which is Journalism in the Age of Trump. So let's talk about that. You're dealing with this on a daily basis. We're going to talk about a lot of specifics, and we don't have to dive into anything specific right away. But just how drastically has your job and the job of journalists everywhere covering the White House especially changed since 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? How tangible is the change?
I would say it is certainly palpable, right? I mean, beyond the realm of merely tangible. It's obvious in everything that we do. And there have been waves of cataclysmic change in the media over the last decade, to use your parameter. Digital media has changed my industry quantitatively and qualitatively. We have a lot more media than we've ever had before. We have a lot more access to information than we've ever had before. We have more outlets. I don't know that more equates with better necessarily. And I think that there has been an emerging need for differentiation between an outlet like the Southampton Press and Mike Bag of Donuts, who puts out a blog where he has an opinion about the traffic patterns in Southampton. They're different. However, online and with links, they are optically equal. And if you know how to work SEO, search engine optimization, very often up high in a queue of a Google search of a particular topic, you can have an outlet that is nowhere near the level of professionalism and applied scrutiny that you would have, let's say, with the Southampton Press. So that's been a big deal. I think the specific question, though, is how has our president changed the job? And I think that in ways big and small, it's completely different. People think that I'm joking when I say the job is now basically the equivalent of working in Thunderdome, which was a Mad Max movie where two men enter, one man leaves. And they think I'm joking, but it's really true. It is combative and hostile in a way that many are unprepared for in the business, because
combative and hostile with the administration.
With the administration, its surrogates, and the supportive base of the president. And I think that is new in its intensity. And it's also new in its application. People in our business are not used to being the focus of attention. People will attack Joe's questions, as I look forward to doing tonight, question their premise, say that they're stupid. But it is rare that it then becomes about Joe versus the candidate. And that has taken shape on a lot of different levels because the scrutiny is often personal. And the pushback to questions and facts and testing is often personal. So it's not that they don't like the question, it's that they don't like you for asking the question, and the question then becomes a reflection of your assumed personal animus. That if you're asking about the travel ban and asking why it isn't at least putatively a Muslim ban when that's what the president called it during the campaign, they will say you are fake news. You are against the president for asking that question. So this is a new dynamic, and it is something that people are still figuring out how to adjust to. And in cable, it's even more intense because opinion is more in cable. My show is one of, well, everybody knows that the morning is the most competitive space on television, right? Because every locale has a show, every network has a show, and all the cables have a show. But on cable, which is my universe now, we're the only morning news show. And I think it's a meaningful distinction to people. Joe and Mika, who are in the news right now from MSNBC, respected colleagues. We go at it from time to time about things, but I respect them, and I certainly think that what just happened here is without any subjective basis of analysis. It was wrong. What was said about Mika Jabrinsky was wrong. It was wrong to talk like that about someone in the media. It was wrong to talk like that about someone who's a woman. And I think that's obvious when viewed through anything other than a partisan lens.
You said as much in a tweet as well.
They are a commentator show. They're an opinion show. And it works really well. I hate having to go against them every morning. They're really, really competitive. And it's hard to compete with them in terms of ratings because politics caters to talk more than it does to reporting. People say they want information. They say they want just the facts. But it does not bear out in any type of quantitative analysis of what you all watch. It just doesn't bear out. I wish it did. I wish that what you wanted was reporting and testing of the arguments that are coming. That would be great, and I would be able to live out here full time because I'd be a very wealthy man. But it doesn't work that way. People want the opinion. And that's why the people who resonate most on cable wind up being your biggest personalities. So the president has changed the game. He did so masterfully during the campaign. He played it to advantage. The biggest mistake that anybody makes when criticizing the president is to criticize his intelligence. It's a mistake. I know him well. I've known him for a long time. My mother is here tonight. Thank God. Thank you for being here, Mom. We grew up with the Trumps. She was friends with Mrs. Trump. My father and the president's father were close. So I know him. He's very, very bright. He knows how to use the media. He knows how to get you off your game, and he does it to play to advantage, all of which should be applauded in a politician. But it makes the job harder.
Mm-hmm. When you look at social media, you're very active on social media. You tweet a lot. I know that you have videos that you post after your daily broadcast where you talk a little more about some of the issues. Mm-hmm. That's a double-edged sword, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it invites more of the same kind of thing that you're talking about that's bringing the conversation down when it starts a conversation among the masses and there's really no filter for it.
Right. So what's the upside? Reach. That's great. To have an activated citizenry is the best situation for a journalist. The more people know, the better it is for us. You want to feed that, but also it's just better to have you better informed. It makes it easier for me to do the testing that we do on my particular show. So that's the upside. Reach, regular people, not having to deal with just the media and specialists. The downside is it is an ugly place. There is nothing like anonymity to give somebody a false sense of bravado. And insults become a proxy for insight. And instead of arguing a point or saying, well, here's a counterfact or something else, they say something mean about you, and that has gotten currency online. So that is that's the double-edged sword to it. You also can get yourself in trouble. We were talking about this before we started. The truncated nature of tweets makes it difficult to talk about subtle points. It makes it difficult to get into a stream of thought with somebody because they can cherry pick any one of the iterations of that conversation anywhere along the line, take it out of context, and make you look bad. And that has happened to me before. And I've had my bosses ask me to change my habits on Twitter many times, and other people just think it's just a masochistic tendency.
So has the president, by the way. Just, that's one thing you have in common.
But look, I think the president, I think there is a savvy here that must be respected in his getting a direct line to his audience. I think that there's an upside and a downside to it, but I don't think he should be faulted for tweeting. I like that the president tweets. Why? Because I want the window into his head and his heart. This is something that we pray for in my business, because what do politicians do? No offense, Mom. But what do politicians do? They answer the way they want to answer. They tell you what they want you to know. They know how to sidestep questions. I feel that Hillary Clinton is one of the best non-answerer of questions I've ever interviewed, where I ask a question, I thought it was pretty simple, and it takes me like 45 seconds to realize I'm nowhere near an answer of that question. And that's a skill. So what do we really want? We want to know what they really know. We want to know how they really feel. We want to know what's motivating what they're telling us that we should believe. And the president gives us that in spades. So I respect that access, and I appreciate that commodity. Do I think that it is helpful to him? Do I think that it is helping him grow his base? I think that objectively you'd have to look and say no. And I think that there's an odd chicken and egg thing going on here with, well, why do you guys focus on his tweets so much? Well, because he's president of the United States. And once we got through this nonsense that because it's in a tweet, it doesn't matter. It's not an official statement from the president. I mean, that was absurd. And certainly the president didn't feel that way. And eventually the White House had to capitulate and realize that, of course, everything that a president says in any medium at any time matters. He is the most powerful man in the world. He is our leader. He's supposed to represent us at every moment in time. That's the job. If you don't like it, don't run for it. So I think that the idea that we're going to ignore it is silly. I think that his propensity to do things either intentionally as what I call a tactic instead of tactic, which is where he goes and beats up on somebody because he doesn't like what's happening, and therefore he can sometimes get a twofer, where he beats me up and he distracts from the discussion of that particular issue. But I think, again, good for him. If he's able to get away with it, if it's able to work with you guys, then I think that the judgment gets a little soft, the ground of judgment on that issue. I accept it as part of the parameters of my job. It's not pleasant. I don't like having tens of thousands of people attack me because the president seems to have make it okay. That's not a nice way to go through your day, but it's the reality of the times.
Since he announced his candidacy, you say you've known the family for forever. But since he announced his candidacy, what's your contact been with the president? How does that happen? What's it like, and what does he think of you? What do you think of him as president?
Well, most recently, he has called me a chained lunatic and a boiler about to explode.
A boiler about to explode.
So, I guess if you read between the lines there, it would be a less than positive opinion.
How about privately? Have you had conversations with him privately?
I have not in a very long time. I used to interview him on a regular basis. It's another thing. You guys in the media put Trump in office because you gave him so much time than everybody else. Okay. Part of that is true in terms of the time that Donald Trump got. But correlation is not necessarily causation. By that I mean, did he get more time? Yes. Is that why he's president? No. In my opinion. Why? Because I've been in so many different states with so many different communities that wound up being relevant, and it was about what he tapped into and what he connected to and what Hillary Clinton did not within her own party and with the country at large that wound up leading to him being president. Why did you give him so much time? Because he's good TV. He made good points. He made a race that should have been boring at that point exciting and engaged a lot of people, and that is one of the points of a campaign. So he was good at it. Why else? Well, because he took the opportunities. You have no idea how often I personally ask people to come on the show and they say no. The reason there were so many reporters on New Day this morning is because no Republicans wanted to come on. We got Representative Adam Kinzinger, who's just a beautiful young guy. I think he's got a great future within his party, served with distinction and valor for the American Armed Services. He's a combat veteran twice over, I believe, 2 different tours where he saw combat at least. He came on. And he wanted to own what was going on, own the process. It's rare. They run. They don't want to come on. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to be tested. That is not a partisan constraint. It just depends on who's in the crosshairs at that time. Democrats can run. Republicans can run. It just depends on who's under more scrutiny. So they don't come on. Hillary Clinton didn't want to come on. She wouldn't even take the phone call thing. They said, why do you talk to him on the phone? I hated talking to him on the phone. Why? Because I had every disadvantage. I don't see him. I can't make eye contact. I can't stop him without it seeming rude. Like right now, if you want to stop me, you give me a little bit of a look, I stop. Or maybe I don't. I don't know. It depends. If I'm in a flow, maybe I don't. I don't know. I'm kind of showing off for my mom. So, but there's a contact issue. There's a dynamic. There's something that is understandable. So that's gone. Okay.
Yeah, and it's surprising because you would be the type of journalist who should have that access to the president because of the long history you've had with the president.
Well, look, familiarity doesn't always breed access because very often when you know somebody, they're hoping that you give them a pass or they're hoping to come to you for safe harbor. And I am many things. One of them is not a safe harbor. So I got his reluctance. I got why he'd be upset about it. I think turning it personal, it's really regrettable. He's taking shots at different people on my network, and we handle it different ways. One of my buddy, who's also out east here, who's an anchor there, when he got insulted personally by the president, he made a big deal about it on his show. I didn't do that. Why? Because I don't want it to be about me at all. I am in no way any competition for the president of the United States. I can't handle him in an interview because he deserves deference. I can't handle him in a PR campaign because he's much more popular and powerful than I'll ever be. So it's just not a competition I want, and I shouldn't be relevant. He's the leader, not me. But it does really mess up your game when he comes after you personally, because even if you don't have one, now ascribed to you as a personal animus. Because of what he said about me, it makes people who support him think I must not like him because he took time to insult me personally, which is just not true. And even if it were true, it wouldn't affect how I do my job. There are lots of opinions that I agree with that I test on the show. And there are lots of people I don't like that I'm very respectful to on the show. So one, again, one doesn't necessarily follow the other. But I used to interview him a lot. Now he hates CNN. He hates my boss. He is not particularly fond of me. And he's trying to use that animosity as a device to forward his own public relations agenda, which I think is very dangerous.
I also think it's working because, for instance, when we tweeted out, actually we put on Facebook that we were doing this, the first comment up is fake news. It seems to be just sort of a gut reaction to what's going on. To be clear, again, when you talk about timing, it's been kind of a rough stretch for CNN. There have been a couple of very high-profile things that have happened. You had the situation involving Anthony Scaramucci, where CNN ended up having to apologize for a story and to pull it. And I think a lot of the critics have made a great deal out of that. I posted something as a journalist myself and just mentioned that I felt like that was the system working, that it's a demonstration of a news organization taking responsibility, making a mistake, but taking responsibility for it.
The irony, right? That somebody does something wrong, owns it, is held accountable for it, and yet we don't see that very often, right?
What did that do to just the general morale in CNN?
Morale is
in the
high.
news
The
operation?
negativity directed towards CNN has had a galvanizing effect. It's also been boffo for ratings. CNN has never been as relevant or as highly rated as it is right now. Our morning show is the highest rated morning show in the history of CNN. And that's, very flattering. It's great. I did not move from the network where I had 10 million people a week to CNN, where if my in-laws don't watch the show, my audience drops by 33%, because I thought I was going to have a huge audience. I did it because I thought it was more relevant to what was going to happen in society on a regular basis. That's why I made the move. So I didn't do it for popularity. I did it for relevance. So CNN has been boosted and emboldened by the criticism from the president because it's not coming from a good place. When you get something wrong, it sucks, Joe. I mean, you know that. Journalists, what are your two commodities? Accuracy and integrity. So when you get something wrong, that's bad. You have to own it. It happens. This happened in a way. Now, I'm not management at CNN, right? I'm what they call talent, which I hate because I don't feel that I have any particular talent. But I'm an anchor there. I don't make management decisions. But my understanding is, and I know the statement from CNN echoed this, was that this was about people not following the procedures. They have something at CNN called the triad, and it is a 3-level vetting procedure before you can report things on air. That is at least 2 more than most news agencies that I've ever been familiar with. They are really highly scrutinizing of things, which is why I have to qualify information so much. I'll say according to the Wall Street Journal, but we haven't matched it yet, and this is according to a source that was unnamed but well placed within it. And sometimes I can almost feel people rolling their eyes like, get to it already. But I need you to understand what the context is for the information. It's very important to where we are. So they didn't follow the procedures. They got it wrong. I know Anthony Scaramucci. Even though we go at it on the show, it doesn't mean that we have personal hostility. He is a friend of mine. He contacted me about the piece. He told me it was wrong. I told him you have a direct line to Zucker. Talk to him. Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN. And he did so, and it was remedied. And I have to tell you, I've watched news agencies fight being wrong a lot. So have you. You can get around things a lot of ways. They had to know at CNN that owning this was going to be a big punch in the nose. And they did it anyway. And I respect that. So what's your next one? What's your next one you're going to come at me with?
And the timing, but the timing couldn't have been worse in the sense of.
Listen, I don't think you can judge it that
narrative.
way. That's fine. Look, if you want to have a bullshit narrative, excuse my language. If you want to have a BS narrative, you're going to have it no matter what happens. If you want to say that I'm unfair, it doesn't matter what I report or how I report it. You're going to be able to say it. You cannot do this job with an eye toward or a paranoia toward how your reporting will be received. You can't, because by its very nature, news is often what the powerful want to keep hidden. And it is almost a guarantee that in a controversial situation, you will have both sides not like what you report. So you can't go into it expecting popularity or applause or even congratulations or even approval or appreciation. you're going to be very disappointed. So the timing is what it is. This is when we were reporting on it. They got it wrong. CNN had to do what it had to do. And when would it have been better? 6 months ago? A month from now? This has been going on since Trump came in the race and developed a very useful device to distract from criticism, which is anyone who criticizes me is a bad person. Any criticism of me is untrue. Anybody who says it is fake. And we have seen an evolution of the politicization of truth to a point where you are dangerously approximating a perspective where I will only believe as fact that which comports with what I already believe. That is a very slippery slope.
Do you think there are enough firewalls in American society and American media to keep that from spreading to a dangerous level? I mean, I think there is, the debate over who owns the truth and is a key debate that's going on right now. But is there a danger of that spreading even to make it even worse and become a real potentially dangerous situation? Or do we have enough firewalls in place in the media, in politics, to keep that from happening?
What do you think?
Well, nobody came to hear what I think, honestly. But I think the media is part of the question, and I think we talked about ratings. Yeah. You mentioned ratings, and ratings for your job are key. And as I said, it's the same kind of criticism newspapers get about you're only doing that to sell newspapers. Mm-hmm. But it's so much more in television news because, as you said, you're sort of holding the fort down as a news show in the morning. Yeah. Most people get their information from television in the morning. You're doing a news show while everybody else is doing, opinion-based shows. How long can you hold that fort down? I feel like as long as there are outposts like that, it helps keep the focus on facts rather than just purely opinions.
Well, look, let me see. There's a lot to unpack there. Mm. It's a very complicated question.
Sorry.
I would have asked it much more simply, and I would have taken
sure.
it.
That's why you're there, and I'm here.
I think that, what can I tell you? This is what I know. The commitment at CNN is absolute to the way we do this show. I would not do it otherwise. I've had opportunities. I just had a window of opportunity where I redid my deal with CNN, and I had opportunities to do my own show at night where I would have taken on the role of more of a commentator and brought the fight, brought an argument every night. And I didn't do it, not because I don't think I would be good at it, but because I don't want that. I don't want it to be what I can convince people of every night. I prefer the opportunity to test the arguments that are out there. I think that's more useful than another voice added to the mix. CNN's commitment, according to my boss, is absolute. He wants the show done the way it is. He wants it to be a news show. Most of my guests are journalists on my show. They are not pundits. I know CNN and cable in general is notable for a proliferation of panels. All those boxes of different yakety yak. We do not do that on New Day for a couple of reasons. One, practicality. You're just waking up 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. How much noise can you take? You already got your spouse who's yapping, and you may have kids who's yapping. You got to get ready for work or whatever it is. So it's a different period. And the second one is I don't enjoy them. I like one-on-one. I like a good debate. Two people. It's got to be civil. If they start talking over each other, I get very rude very fast because I don't want to hear it. If you don't have enough respect to let me finish my point, and if you don't know when to shut up because it's enough now and you're just filibustering and trying to fill time, which a lot of pros know how to do. They know time is my enemy. They know that I'm going to have to get out. They know this can't last forever. So when somebody filibusters, it's a very good technique. That's why I have to interrupt them. I don't interrupt them because I want to be rude. I mean, I understand how it plays. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play to disadvantage. It's hard enough for me already. I have to end everything with a question mark, where they can finish everything with a declarative statement. So that's why we don't do them. So the commitment is absolute. How about as a commodity? I think that there is opportunity in what we're seeing right now in this environment with our media culture and our political culture. I think there is opportunity for people like me and for a lot of us at CNN, because you are going to have to look at the media and make judgments. The idea of the media as a monolith is a silly notion. There is no monolith, there is no team, there is no agreement, there is no concerted effort. It is a group of competitive people who are trying to beat the others in a clean way. That's what it is. It's a competitive business. Who gets there first? Joe or Chris? Who gets it right? Joe or Chris? That's why you see all the SIG outs on the marketing for media. What do they say? Southampton Press, the most trusted name in news. ABC, the most trusted name in news. Fox News, the most. Everybody wants that commodity. Why? Because you have two things in the media. You've got accuracy and you've got integrity. So it's very competitive. There is no collusion, loaded word, I mean it in this context. There is no collusion among the media. There is no groupthink. There is none of that. It's absurd. It's just absurd. It does not exist. I wish there were more of it, frankly. I feel like I'd love to see the media stiffen up a little bit more in the face of criticism that's unfair and in the face of obvious tactics to draw your eye away from things and to make you believe things and to tap into your darkness and to tap into the negativity. There is a reason that a riot can break out, but a love-in never breaks out. You never see 1 minute they were just standing there and the next minute they're all hugging. Where did all this goodness come from? It doesn't go like that. Why? Negativity is addictive. Anger is addictive. It's an easy reach for humanity. It's an easy proxy for a lot of other emotions. It's an easy way to remove the onus of responsibility for people and have it be put on someone else. There's a reason that demagogues in history have come to power in accelerated fashion, and those who would advocate virtue are often much more slower to get mass appeal. Why is that? Because negativity works. Why do campaigns work off Joe's ability to tear me down more than building himself up? Because you like it, you will vote on it. And I'm sorry, but that's true. And if you want to know why certain things are in his newspaper on a given page or on my show in a given position, think about what you watch. And the idea that, boy, I would love to have more on jobs in this country. I'd like to have the reporting. Then watch it, because I will show you graphs of minute by minutes of my show, done by the minute. It's actually done at 27-second intervals, okay? And the ratings for the show looks like a sine curve. The absolute is that when a commercial goes, everybody changes channels and moves around, right? So that's why they play with spacing of commercials. So it's a sine curve. What are those high peaks? The stuff that you see most on television, the stuff you read most about in his newspaper. So if you watched what you say you want, you would have a different reality. I'm just telling you that. And I'm at CNN, where we constantly put things on TV, even though we know they're not going to rate that well. It happens all the time. This is objective. They're recording it, you're remembering it, all of you should remember it. It is a simple examination. Watch the show, go online, take a look at the clips. Nobody covers what matters more than we do. I don't care how you want to quantify it. I know it for a fact. I am frustrated by this fact because I know it's not going to do as well. I know I cannot compete with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski if what they're going to do is talk about whether the president is mentally fit all morning. And I am going to go at it with congressmen about whether or not the CBO score on Medicaid is using the proper baseline or whether or not they should have slid at 6 or 8 months. You don't want to hear that as much. I don't care what you say right now. I know you don't want to watch it as much because I see the ratings. And I would rather talk about the CBO score. I will not discuss the president's mental fitness. I'm not a psychologist or a doctor. That's not a relevant basis of analysis for a journalist. But you want it more, so they watch it more. There's a reason that Fox is killing it in the cable news ratings. I work there. Roger Ailes was the most generous boss to me I've ever had. I know he got a black eye, may he rest in peace. I'm not saying it was undeserved. By all objective criteria, it was deserved. And there's more accountability that's deserved. But he gave me opportunity when no one else would. I couldn't get a job on New York One when Roger Ailes gave me a job. New York One's a great outlet. I'm just saying they wouldn't give me a job. So I owe him a debt of gratitude for the opportunity he gave me. And I was there. And when you tell a group of people what they want to hear, they're going to watch you. And when you say it in a way that you know appeals to whatever is motivating them emotionally, you're going to have them. And they do that brilliantly there. They cater to a population that felt underserved by the media. It was a genius play. That's why they do so well. It's not because they're more accurate or have more integrity than anybody else. That's just not true. So the ratings matter, but there's a reason for them. And I do believe, with all due respect, we're all community here. We're not part-time residents. My wife grew up coming out here. I would live out here full-time if she would let me. We're out here every weekend, all year round. I consider Southampton home way more than I ever have Manhattan. I love it here. I love the people here. You got to look in the mirror when it comes to this scrutiny. The media does a lot of things wrong. It does play to a lot of instincts sometimes that are more opportunistic than they are altruistic. I think that's fair criticism. But you got to look at each individual outlet, each individual person, and you got to look at yourselves and ask, what do you watch most often? If you watched issue and policy debate most often that is keeping it clean, the ratings wouldn't look like they do. They just wouldn't. And you're hearing it from somebody who would be happy to entertain that type of indulgence. I would do it all day long, 24/7.
You've worked at a lot of different outlets.
I know, which
Fox.
makes me feel like I'm not employable. You know what I mean? Like when I was hearing you say it, I was like, wow, what went wrong?
You have bounced around. What do you find, and I'm not asking to name names here, but how different are the news operations in significant ways as far as how they approach the idea of ratings versus real serious subjects and things that need to be reported in addition to things that people want to see?
Well, look, other than what I've said already about what CNN does that I believe does serve the mandate of journalism and not just the opportunism of ratings, you have to be concerned about ratings. You're in a business. They're owned by business. That's fair criticism. When people say corporate media, it's accurate. It is corporate media. You are owned by corporations. They do have P&L. It does matter. You want to do good with your job, be relevant, be helpful, be right, and you want to do well. Why? 2 reasons. Well, that's how you pay your taxes in Southampton. And 2, that is how you get more relevance in the business. If we were getting crushed in the morning, I wouldn't get the same people that I get on. I wouldn't get the same reach. Who knows? Maybe, Joe Shaw with the nice locks and the nice beard and the fancy pockets, but maybe he doesn't ask me on because the show's not as relevant. It doesn't do as well. Maybe, who knows? So every outlet's got to worry about that. It'd be disingenuous to say otherwise. But it's how you approach that and how you try to do your best. And I think every shop is different. It's a very personal thing. So when someone will say, well, CNN, you guys said so-and-so. There is no you guys. Fake news to me is a surrender of the dignity of rational thought. Show me what I said that's inaccurate. Show me where I was unfair. There are plenty of opportunities. I'm not saying they don't exist. The first word that comes to mind about me when I think about myself as a reporter or as a husband or as a parent is flawed. There are going to be plenty of opportunities, but catch me.
What about the James O'Keefe video of the producer from CNN?
The one today or the other one?
I didn't see the one today, actually.
Oh, well, never mind.
It was a new one. Okay.
It was a test. You passed.
The producer from CNN who talked about ratings and really seemed to feed the idea that choices are made about what you focus on as a journalist to feed ratings more than it's the opposite of the narrative you're giving that says it's about doing what we should do rather than just what people want to see all the time. He said basically the opposite and was caught on a hidden video camera saying something along those lines. What do you say to that?
What's the legitimate concern? The legitimate concern is you're covering Russian interference because it is good for ratings, not because it is a real news story. I think that's what O'Keefe is trying to isolate with his gotcha footage. The Veritas Project is James O'Keefe. I think that's a demonstrably false proposition. To believe that a foreign power intentionally, covertly, and absolutely trying to pervert our democratic process is an existential threat to the democracy. I don't understand how you could see the threat and what we know happened any other way. I'm talking about Russian interference by hacking and different propaganda mechanisms in our election, okay? It happened. We know it happened. Why did the president fight it for so long and arguably continue to? Here's why. Not because he doesn't think it happened. I don't think. I'm not in the man's mind, okay? But by objective criteria and a little bit of gut work, every time President Trump hears the words Russian interference, in his mind, he thinks, bad for me. This is bad for me. It makes people think I didn't win legitimately. That would be a false conclusion. If you are out there and you believe that the Russian interference is why the president won the election, I have to tell you, you should prepare for disappointment, because there is no proof of that. There's just no proof. Oh, well, but what about what they did with the emails? Hey, the emails exist. That's the problem. What happened with the server was real. That was the problem for Hillary Clinton. How it was handled was the problem for Hillary Clinton. Not that it was done, or WikiLeaks. Look, is WikiLeaks a good thing, a bad thing? That's for you to decide. Is it a crime to hack somebody's computer and take their personal? Yes, it's a crime. But hacking is part of our reality. You're going to read it anyway. We encourage you to read it anyway. We have an odd relationship with hacking and the procurement of information in the media. We want things to get out. So he doesn't like Russian interference because he thinks it means that people think he didn't win fair and square. I don't think that that is a proper conclusion that people should draw from that, objectively, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that the Russian interference doesn't matter. It does matter. The collusion questions, okay? So did they use anyone from his campaign? Did anyone from his campaign help? Is that why there weren't disclosures of these various meetings? I don't know. It is fair to say we have not seen dispositive proof or even heavy proof or seriously suggestive proof of negative conclusions to those questions. I also think it's unfair to draw a conclusion because we don't know what the investigators have. And there is this hypocrisy of saying, well, there's been no proof, so you should end the investigation. But the investigation is not over. And you keep saying, don't pry into the investigation. Don't try to get in front of the investigation. But you're saying because it hasn't leaked that we should end the investigation. That's it's hypocritical thinking. It's irrational. It's what they used to call, when you learn argumentation, RAA reasoning, ridiculo ad absurdum, taking something down to its most silly level to make a simple point. And the simple point here would be, if we don't know, we should stop looking. I don't agree with that. I think you should let this special counsel, who was applauded by everybody, who is a registered Republican, by the way, who was put in there, let him do his job. If there's nothing there, nobody should want that conclusion and that process to come to its efficient end more than the President of the United States, because he will get the ultimate validation, which is Bob Mueller turning over his findings or lack thereof to the Attorney General or whoever is in its stead at that point, because the Attorney General is recused from the investigation. And then we'll all know there's nothing there. So that's what matters in this discussion. Okay, so the cheap shot is you only cover it because it rates. That's not true. I cover it because it's relevant. And even though I get a lot of heat for it, I cover it anyway. That's why we cover it. That's why we cover healthcare. And that process, as constipated as it is, more than other people do it. Because I think it matters. Russian interference matters. They're going to do it again. The intel community says they're going to do it again. We got to figure out how to stop this. Why? Because it's really dangerous. You know, what if we don't have confidence in the outcome of an election? You know, exit polls are weird enough already. We know that the vote count can't be 100% accurate all across the country. It's such a silly, antiquated process that we use. You pay your mortgage online, right? I mean, how many people here pay their bills online? Just a show of hands, right? So it's your most sensitive information. Other than your kids, your money's like right up there, right? And that you'll do online. But we can't vote online. That we can't do because we can't make sure it's safe. It's absurd. We don't do it for a whole list of political reasons. So the idea that you only cover that for ratings, which is what O'Keefe is trying to get to, because that feeds a narrative from the political right, is a false premise.
Okay. There's something you deal with.
All that and just okay?
Yeah, well, moving on. we only have the library for a certain amount of time, and I have so much to ask. You deal with something.
I thought that was like, I gave you
very
everything
good.
I had.
I feel a little superfluous.
Your hair
actually.
was like blowing from all the wind coming out.
It's good. You deal with something that I think journalists at every level deal with, because I know we deal with it as well, and it's that when you try to use the internet and social media and other tools for outreach, and you try and add a multimedia aspect and a give and take, and here's a little more information, you start to walk a line between journalist and pundit. And you had posted something, you tweeted something out, and Larry Elder, I just saw this earlier today, I was looking at your stream, and Larry Elder, who's a conservative radio host in California, and somebody you know, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Said to you, you just ripped Trump. Are those who defend, and those who defend his tweets, are you a journalist right now, or are you another lefty pundit? It's hard to tell. Well, how do you walk that line between being a journalist and talking about the news stories you're reporting in a way that's engaging without crossing over into being a pundit? Because it's tough. It's something that I think journalists in the last 15 years, 10 years, have had to deal with that was never an issue before because of the ease of social media in that regard.
So you have objective and subjective, right? Objective and subjective. What's objective? What's 2 + 2? 4. Is there any other acceptable answer? No. So am I supposed to offer the other side on what 2 + 2 is? No. Why? Because it's objectively that. Do you attack a woman by making up the fact that she had a facelift and was bleeding from her face when she came to see you? Is there any time in your life that you would allow someone that you care about to say something like that? No.
Excuse me, but when you attack the president every day.
No. Ask your question.
We're gonna let me ask you. We're gonna actually give people a chance.
Ask your question.
We'll have some people. We're gonna give you a chance. You can be number one to ask the questions. We're gonna take questions from the audience. I promise you. We'll let you go first. All right?
And look, but his shirt says "very fake news." I get that there's animosity towards the media. It's okay. It's okay. Believe me, I spent too much of my life traveling around countries where the idea of getting up like that and talking in a forum like this would be a risk to your safety. And that's what's scary. Somebody wanted to get up and talk. I only exist because we want to feed this interchange. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with the idea that there's fake news. Sometimes that's true. There is fake news. You will find it. The idea that we attack the president every day. Here's what I would say. I think that the numbers bear out the reality. The number of stories that can be seen as negative about the president are disproportionate to those that can be seen as positive. Is that worthy of criticism? I think it honestly depends on your frame of reference and the lens through which you view those numbers. When I am negative about the president, that means what? That I'm taking a shot at him personally? I'd ask for the proof of that. Larry Elder was trying to make a point today. He comes from the political right. I don't believe it is an objective situation what happened with Mika Brzezinski. The President of the United States should be better than that. I don't think that is an opinion as much as it is a fact. That's what I said. Do I believe that I should judge his policy positions? Absolutely not. Should I test his policy positions? Yes. If you don't like being tested, can you decide to conclude that the mere idea that I question your position shows an animus? Yes, you can conclude that. It is an unfair conclusion. If the president is going to insist on driving media cycles with very provocative and often hostile comments, you are going to see resulting negative news cycles. Whose responsibility is that? To be fair, it's both. I have heard said on my show from my co-anchor and from myself and from others, you can't always chase the shiny object. What's the shiny object? That's the president tweeting something about Morning Joe, or that Cuomo's a chained lunatic, and or whatever it is. Okay, but everything the president says matters. You have to look at it, but you also don't want to forget everything else. It's not an easy balance to strike. But I do think that objectively, if you look at the news cycles and what they have been about and where they come from, The president certainly bears responsibility for their origination and their continuation. Could it be done better? That's an easy one. Everything can be done better. Is this period of such intense negativity making people like me think about how to do it better? Yeah, why? Because I don't like this. I don't like it. I don't care if it's good for ratings. I don't care if people who believe in fake news are actually watching us more now because they want to see if they can catch fake news and it's helping ratings and making us more relevant. I don't like it. I don't think the negativity gets you to a good place. And I don't think that the problems that the president, in good faith, is trying to deal with will happen in this environment because there's too much incentive to keep the division going. It works too well politically. It works too well with each party's base. It works too well with drawing an audience. And it makes a journalist's job easier in a way. It is easy to cover someone being angry about fake news versus someone, calling that one a dumb Trumper and they go back and forth. It's easy to cover. It's much easier than it is to cover policy. But that doesn't make it as useful. That doesn't make it as beneficial to the social contract and to that social dialogue. So while I didn't get into this business to sweat criticism. I embrace it. I take it. I've got a thick skin. Otherwise, you don't make it in my business. And there's plenty of room for criticism. How you criticize matters as well. I would never insult the president personally. Never. I may have, why? I get a lot of heat for that, for the left. How can you respect this man? How can you respect this man? The office of the president commands our respect. He is our duly elected leader. And if you don't think that because he lost the popular vote, then you need a civics class. We have an electoral college here. Well, we shouldn't have an electoral college. Great. Can't wait to cover the Constitutional Convention. But right now, you have it as what it is. He is our duly elected president. He demands your respect. Criticize. Say he's wrong. Put out better ideas. Don't vote for him the next time. Fine. These are all the things you do. I grew up with that dynamic. My father, how many elections did Pop lose before he ever won one? I never knew you could win an election when I was a kid. I get it. But what I'm saying is, you got to respect the office. I go at the arguments because I respect the office. And I go at them for another reason, this bubble mentality. Ask my wife how little we pay for airfare because of how much I'm in a bubble. I have so many miles on so many different airlines that I am treated like the Pope when I enter the airport. I don't even need a card anymore. I walk in, they're like, "Oh, hey, Chris, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, Sally, how you been?" We travel like crazy. I've been all over this country. People are hurting. Donald Trump is president because he tapped into a population that feels underserved culturally and economically and practically. They feel they're not spoken to, and when they are, they're lied to, and when they're not, they're forgotten. And that he spoke to them, and he was going to go in there and get rid of these elitists, even though he is one, even though he may not have understandable connections to that group of people. They believed him, and they vote for him at a ratio that far exceeded Hillary Clinton and exceeded her ability to motivate her own base. So that's why he won. That's why he's the president, and those people are still angry. And they're going to have to be served. Those issues matter. So we cover healthcare because it's not just numbers. One of the things I'm trying to do more on the show, and to the point of what rates and what doesn't. I have two people come on and fight about what's going on, or I go at it with a congressman and show how they're not being, I believe, fully truthful to you about what the CBO is or whatever. It's going to do well. People like it. They like the fireworks. It'll upset the man in the back. It'll make some woman over here happy, and it will resonate. Okay. What I'd rather do is have a series of profiles of the people that are affected by different components and aspects of our healthcare system. Have a surgeon on who talks about how their job is done and how they're able to make decisions and not make decisions on the basis of how they're going to have to deal with insurers and their own provider or the hospital or whatever network they're a part of or choose not to be. Of what the difficulties are dealing with Medicaid, of what the fraud and waste is with Medicaid. The mom who has the kid who's now considered to have a pre-existing condition and how frightened to death she is of not being able to get care. The young guy who's healthy as a horse and doesn't want to have to buy a health insurance policy with maternity care in it and doesn't understand the idea of risk pool. Those are the stories I want to tell. Those are the people I want to have on because I feel that it would be so informative. But you know what else? It's boring. It's boring. People don't watch it. And it's heartbreaking. And I feel for those people that I put on TV and that I often cajole to go on TV because people don't want to open up their lives. They don't want to talk about the embarrassment of not being able to pay for something or, God forbid, not being able to help their kid. And they take it on good faith that I'm going to help them. You know, this job can be a very odd combination of responsibilities. You know, you talk to somebody who's hurting, you have a responsibility to them emotionally long after the relationship ends for the camera. You know, are they going to get that help? Do you follow up? So these things matter, and I would love to talk about things that matter in that context more often, but there are limitations to your appetites. And the fighting sells, and the president knows it. And I don't mean that to paint him as a villain. I don't think that's fair. I get that he's said things that are negative, pejorative, and cater to people's darker instincts. That's fair criticism. There is space for it. He deserves it. What he tweets, there is space for criticism. He deserves it. But it's not as simple as everything's fake news because it's negative. Or every time you have a lefty on and you're not as tough of a on as you were on the righty, that means you're biased. Or that if you criticize somebody, it means you don't like them. These are excuses for deeper thought. These are conclusions that are born of a desire to just believe what you already do. This is just evidence of a closed mind. I tell people the same thing all the time. I'm happy to get people's approval. Everybody wants to be liked. You know, I kind of forget what it's like, but everybody wants it. And you want people to think you're doing a good job. But what I ask them more than anything is just have an open mind. Don't just applaud me for going after somebody in a way that you agree with. I'd love to hear from people that, you know what, I love Obama, and I love that the ACA got passed, and I love that more people are covered, but man, we do have problems in some of these individual markets. I mean, these deductibles are just choking people off. This has got to be fixed. You know, the Democrats can't just stand and watch this burn and watch the GOP's own difficulties. They got to get in the mix, man. It may not be to their political advantage, but they got to get in the mix. I'd love to hear that from more lefties. And I'd love to hear from more righties. You know what? He is the head of my party. I do want to get the agenda through, but you know, what he said about Mika Brzezinski was just wrong. You know, there's got to be a line. You know, we need decency at the end of the day. I'd like to hear more of that because it scares me, the tribalism, man. When you take your mind out of anything that matters, you're in a scary place fast. You know, I mean, politics always plays to emotion. Why? Because it works. It's so much easier to make a compelling case to somebody that kind of, you know, gin up their fears or suspicions or angers or hatred towards other groups. It works. I've seen it. I've been in places where people have wanted to kill me because I'm American, and they've tried. And you see it in their eyes, and you realize how potent that is, and people want to write them off as savages. You really think they're that different than we are? You really think that one faith has some kind of lock on virtue? Do you really think that most people that you know aren't economic opportunity and educational opportunity or away from being criminal? I think people have to examine themselves, and not just by what's obvious, but to take the time to be open. Listen to the man in the back. It means enough to him that he puts on a shirt that says very fake news, and he's angry about things, and he doesn't like it. Don't dismiss him because you don't agree. You got to listen to it. And if it's just that he just hates Cuomo, all right, then, hopefully he doesn't follow me to the car.
Let's find out. Because how about we take a couple of questions from the audience, sir?
You're first.
Can we just make a couple of rules about the questions?
No, let it go.
Sure, I mean, we'll be...
Let it go.
Let's keep questions. Let's stick with questions, please. And let's keep them brief, and we'll take a couple. And if you have a question, raise your hand. Penny will bring you up.
I know. Yeah, I see that. You got a whole book.
We're going to give you a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate the commentary you've made.
If you could back up and speak into the mics, too, just so people can hear you.
What's your question?
All right, my question, hello?
It was just pleasantries so far.
Yes. My question is, you started off this talking about combativeness between the president and the media. And it seems to me that you put this all on the president. So the media is got no...
I believe...
Is he colluding in on this at all?
I think
that
I think that what I said was, and I'll say it again.
Okay.
Absolutely, there's shared responsibility. Absolutely. You make choices every day about what you cover and what you don't and how you cover it. what I would give you as guidance is, I am not who matters, okay? I mean, I matter on my show. I'm an anchor. I make those decisions. I'm a powerful anchor. I can be provocative. But the president is the most important man in the world. He sets the agenda. He sets the tone. I said to one of his main advisors this morning, you should try an experiment. Have the president only tweet about the new prosthetic for the VA that we had on our show today, which is going to change the lives of different injured veterans, what he's doing with Kate's Law and his argument for sanctuary cities, what he's doing for jobs, what his tax plan is that he has not put forward yet, but he keeps telling us how good it is. Have him focus on just those things. Don't take a single shot at the media for a week. Not because they don't deserve it, but because you want to make the point that we should be covering his agenda as much as we do his mouth. As an experiment, try it and see who covers the things that you believe matters and who don't. See who does it. Because then you have the high ground for the criticism. You can't look at media coverage and say, look, 90% of your stories are negative. Well, but did you look at the fact that 2 out of 3 tweets of the President of the United States are attacks on the media, which drive the media cycle?
That's actually not true.
It is absolutely true. There was
Well,
a
it's
bar
your
graph
truth.
this morning. No. See, there is no
Wait,
your
hold
truth.
on. That's a great
There is no
moment to
your
stop
truth.
for a second because
Because
of
you
your
don't like
truth.
it doesn't make it false.
Uh,
All right?
don't-
They did a
Don't
counting,
insult me by saying
but
that,
it's an
okay?
insulting premise. It just is. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. Your
Hang on
premise
one
is
second. What is the
insulting.
fact that we're debating here?
The fact is whether or
The
not
2
what
out
I
of-
said about 2 out of the 3 tweets. There's a graph online where they calculated all his tweets.
Okay. I can show you 10 graphs online that say it's roughly more like 1 out of 10.
I'll tell you what. Find me one. You got a phone. You got a smartphone, I'm sure.
No, I don't.
Find me a graph that shows
I'm
that
a
1
dumb,
out of 10
I'm
tweets.
a dumb Donald Trump supporter. What can I tell you?
But look,
right?
I think that's an excuse.
Yeah.
I think it's an excuse. I really do. I think it's an excuse. I've been with
All right,
Trump
it-
supporters everywhere around this country. They come in all colors, shapes, and sizes, and economic
Yeah.
and social backgrounds. The idea that you want to play yourself as a victim, that's your choice. That's your choice.
A victim?
Yeah, you just said, I'm just a stupid Donald Trump supporter. That's
Well-
putting yourself as a victim. You're
Well,
not a
I've been
victim.
I've been listening too much of liberal news. Everybody's
That's
a
your
victim.
choice also.
I think we're
You know,
gonna we're
That's
gonna
your choice also.
This you
All
have a,
right.
do you have another? I'll give you one more
All right,
question.
one more
That's how
question.
generous I am.
You talked. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You talked about Russian hacking as an existential threat.
Yes.
And then you went on to say there's no proof.
No, I did not. But I'll say it again. I'll
You
make
said
the point.
there's no
I'll make the
proof
point again.
of that there's
you
no
are
proof.
conflating 2 issues, and I understand why you are. There is a temptation to see everything that's about the Russian interference in the election as being a way to get the president. I understand why people who wear shirts like that often feel this way. Russian interference, the hacking that they did during the election, the propaganda campaign that they used on social media, is real, and it happened with negative intent. The intelligence community is unanimous on it. I've been in this business a long time. Unanimity in that community is rare.
The
You're
New York
talking
Times
about-
just came out
you're
with a
talking-
retraction that said there wasn't 17 agencies, it was 4.
No, that's not true.
It was a retraction.
Listen,
Nobody read the retraction.
I'm telling you, no, they were talking about a.
Hang on. Let me pause. Let me pause you. Wait. I'm just going to pause you for a second.
Yeah.
Can we? I'm going to let him answer your question,
Okay.
but can you go back down
Yes.
so we can
Yeah.
take some more questions?
All right, so
I appreciate it.
The
though.
New York
Thank you.
Times was dealing with a specific thing about Susan Rice, and I'm not here to defend the New York Times. Everybody gets things wrong. The community, the intelligence community, believes what it believes about the interference. You are conflating the interference with the allegations of collusion by and among those on the president's staff and campaign. On that, I said, we have seen no evidence of that collusion, but we're also not through the investigative process. So I think it's equally wrong to say that there is proof or there is not proof. That was what I said.
Okay. Any other questions? Can you come up to the?
I like CNN when I travel because it's a great international network and they really came on the scene with the first Gulf War. But on these morning shows, they get stuck. Almost like I have to turn off the sound and just watch the tape going by. Where is the news? You spend hours on a morning with the Russian collusion and all that, ad nauseum. And then you wonder, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, in Syria, in Sudan, all over the place. I don't get the news anymore. I think a lot of it is political. I think you don't even see your own bias sometimes, but you seem like a nice person.
I think that, thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that, look, these are judgments. One of the things that we decided to do with New Day that I think is a little different is we made a decision collectively to go more deep than wide, because we felt that adjusting for the information age, you can get the headlines from around the world. When you travel, that's CNN International. Our show has become relevant enough that they now show the first hour of New Day all over the world. But CNN International is its own independent componentry of Turner Broadcasting, of the CNN family, and they're amazing. I believe CNN actually has the best foreign operation in the media. The domestic, that's a dogfight. So you make judgments. And because I feel that you can go on Google or YouTube and get such quick access to a broad array of information on different stories, whether foreign, as you were suggesting, or domestic and discrete, even on the community level, I wanted to focus on depth, because what I felt we can deliver better than others is a forum for deepening the understanding on something that does matter. So let's say Russian collusion. I rarely say Russian collusion on the show because I think that it feeds a mistake of conflating the interference and the hacking from who might have been involved in that and how, which really is specific purview of a criminal investigation that's being done by this special counsel. And I think you could argue he really should be the only one looking at that because of the political lens. Well, but we do. But again, I'm trying to go for depth. I'm trying to get you the players who are involved in that debate. And that's my calculation of value. And you know what? It could very well not be right for people. You know what I mean? They could be like, you know what? I actually want that survey. And then it's not the right show. And I don't mean that to be flip. I'm saying it's a calculated effort that I'm going to go deeper more than broader. So not as many topics, maybe just 2 or 3, but I'm going to try and drill down with them in a way that's more helpful.
Okay, we have another gentleman with a question.
Actually, my question is for you.
Good. Okay.
Not for Chris.
I have no idea why, but okay.
The question is it possible for people on Twitter to do journalism?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's possible to do journalism. I just don't think it's possible to do it well on Twitter. But I think you can. I think you can use the medium. Sure.
Okay. I can call you on that because I can prove otherwise. Okay. I'm G.D. Griffin. Every morning I live tweet Chris's show, and so when he talks about depth and going into stuff, that's what I do. And so I have an example here of something that I took from his show.
Didn't I say yes? I thought I said you could.
But you said they didn't do it well.
No, I said it's difficult to do it well. How about that?
That's my point. Here you are dismissing people on Twitter.
No, I did not mean to
well.
dismiss. No.
My point is, why doesn't anybody ever say, there are people on Twitter who do know what they're talking about?
Let me ask you a question about that. Do you think people follow tweet storms? Do you have you have a loyal following, I'm guessing, who do follow when you do a series of 20 or 30 tweets to make a point, they will follow that, correct?
They use my stuff on his show.
What have I used on your show?
Okay, application, baseline, who gets there first. Those are all things that I've done on your show. And I post them under New Day. I post them under your New Day CNN. So it's all publicly available, and anybody who wants to search can search. Okay? And so, for example, I actually took a quote from Jonathan Turley, he's a law professor who was on your show on May 15th. And he made a comment as to how he didn't see there was any underlying crime in what Trump was being accused of. And this was on May 15th. And he said, I don't see any underlying crime, and I don't see any comparison to Nixon. And so I immediately shot back in real time on the show. I said, need a crime. Flynn's failure to register as a foreign agent who was then hired by Trump. Trump is obstructing justice in the Flynn investigation. Yes, no, maybe so. And then I said, read the HuffPo link I sent you. It specifically mentions FBI tactic of building parallel cases. Trump is interfering in those cases, okay? So Who got that right? Did Jonathan Turley get it right when he said there's no underlying crime? Or was I on the money back on May 15th when I said there is an underlying crime? It's obstruction pertaining to the Flynn case.
Okay,
and I think history would show that I got it right.
That's a question.
And so that's good journalism, right?
Let's let him answer. That's a good question.
Well, I mean, you can't know who got it right because you don't have an actual case. You don't have an actual prosecution that gets adjudicated, and you have a result, so you know who was right and who wasn't right.
But what's the conversation now? It's about obstructing justice. Here's Jonathan Turley on your show making a comment, trying to beat down the idea that there's no underlying crime.
Right, which is his right to do, by the way.
But
you don't want just one
fine.
opinion.
It's my right to step up and say there was.
Right.
So who does history
But
say
I don't
got it?
understand what you're upset about exactly. If you have the forum and you're able to put it out on Twitter and you believe that I'm using it on my show, then you should be pretty satisfied.
That's what I'm a little
I call
confused
it
too.
plagiarism. All right, because if it's journalism on Twitter, like you just admitted, okay, doesn't journalism have a copyright attached to it?
I better let my attorney take it from here.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? Right here.
This morning,
This is so much more
apparently
interesting, by the way.
Kellyanne Conway suggested to George Stephanopoulos that journalists who criticize the president are somehow unpatriotic. How scary is that? Is this just another line of attack
All right,
besides
so-
the fake media?
You think I upset the man in the back. Kellyanne Conway, okay? I know she gets a lot of strong opinions from people. I am biased about Kellyanne Conway. She's a friend of mine. She's been a friend of mine for almost 25 years. People are shocked when I say that because we go at it the way we do on the show. And I think it's actually a beautiful example of how you can go after somebody's arguments without going after them personally, because I love Kellyanne Conway. Her husband is a good man. She's got beautiful kids. She was raised in the same kind of Italian family that I was. She's a good, smart, committed person. Now, on the last part of those descriptions is her commitment. She is committed to advancing the president's agenda and his political welfare, all right? She is going to play to advantage whenever she can. You can criticize her and say that sometimes she goes too far. I have done that on our show. The idea of criticism being unpatriotic is demonstrably false, right? The whole basis of our democracy is that criticism is patriotic. How you do it, right? There's a misunderstanding about the First Amendment. Do you have a right to say it any way you want? Yes. Does that make it right? Because you have the right, does it make it right? They can often be very different things. Does Kellyanne Conway have the right to say, if you criticize the president, maybe you're being unpatriotic? Yup. Is she right to say that? Now, that's up to you. How do I feel about that as a journalist? There is zero chance of me ever being scared out of doing my job. There is zero chance. I often give free advice that don't make the mistake of taking it to me personally when we're going back and forth in any type of test match. It is a mistake because all it's going to do is bring on more of the same. So the idea of being censured or being seen as unpatriotic, to me, is a non-starter. The job, the beauty, the virtue of the democracy is to go after it. Is she saying it to threaten journalists? I don't think so. Is she saying it to whip up the base of Trump supporters? Perhaps, and you could argue that's her job. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Either answer is correct.
One. Let's let some other people have a chance. Who else? I need one more question. Can you come up? Yes.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, we'll do two more. You may. I'll give you the last word. How about that? I have a woman up here too.
We'll do three more questions.
All
You're
right,
next.
we'll do you as well. You're okay with that?
Yeah,
All right,
sure.
We'll do.
What's better
these
than
three.
this?
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, Chris, I was a lighting director a long time for a major network with many people like you. What? Oh, okay. I was a lighting director for a long time for a major network. mostly soaps, but a lot of news. And I have to tell you, about 90% of the time when I was working the news, I wanted to tell the electrician to black out the lights, because corporate news was just following whatever line was going down. It was almost frightening sometimes, like during the run-up to the Gulf War. I'm not going to name names, but you can guess who they are. We had the military in there showing pictures of a bomb going down a smokestack, a smart bomb. And they were in awe of this. They didn't question this. They didn't question the rods. They didn't question any of this. It turns out later that 99% of those missiles didn't work. But the whole thing that the military was doing, that the Bush administration was doing at the time, the selective feeding of images, and then the network just threw them up there without really doing much due diligence.
Are we coming to a question here?
What?
I'd like to come to a question.
Here. Here's my question. Okay, I'm just giving you a little background. Sorry, I'm going on and on.
That's all right.
Context.
My
want
question
to make sure
is
we're leading.
my question is this. Why is there no outrage right now when the Saudis have basically said to Qatar, we're demanding that you dissolve Al Jazeera?
So why is there no outrage about that?
Thank you.
I don't know that there isn't outrage about that.
I haven't heard anything. I mean, how far was that from the GOP demanding that the New York Times shut down? I think
I don't think the GOP is demanding that the New York Times.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if things keep going a certain way, when you're marching towards this thing where you can demand that there are shutdowns on news outlets, even though sometimes I don't believe the news outlets.
Well, but Saudi Arabia, which is thank you for your question, appreciate it. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, right? There is a potency there to how that society works and what the expectations of its leadership has that is totally different than here. I do not see a conceivable slippery slope between what you're alleging is going on there with Al Jazeera to anything that could happen in the United States.
That's not alleging. They've got that written
But
down.
I'm saying you're taking one specific perspective on what's being done and why. I'm saying I don't see a risk of that in the United States of America.
Okay.
Can we go to this woman in the back? Come on.
I'm not going to come up. I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Okay, keep it brief, please.
First of all, I am addicted to CNN. I'm addicted to Anderson Cooper. I'm addicted
Me too.
to Lemon.
I love Anderson Cooper.
Addicted. And I am not bored by the facts that you talked about. I want to hear more and more and more about it. However, there is one simple thing that I think that we are ignoring here. I wonder how many people saw the cover of, was it Time with the Eagle?
It was the Daily News.
Okay.
It said humiliation on the bottom of it, had the eagle dipping its head.
President who doesn't care about this country, he only cares about himself, and this is very, very dangerous situation.
I thank you for your comment. Last question. Do you mind coming up?
All right, thanks for the comment.
I'm actually looking more for questions than comments, and hoping we get one right now.
I wonder if I can satisfy you and say what I think as well. I am an ordinary voting female, 86 years old, lived through the Second World War, and live here in Watermill for over 40 years in the same house. I watch television because it brings me to the world that I cannot go to any longer. I watch the news every morning, and at first I turned on Joe and Mika. And I was upset that people like me were speaking and get interrupted all the time. So I thought, I'm not really getting information. I turned to Channel 25, to you, and to Alison Camerata. And I realized that you respect the people who come to your program, and that you show them that respect when you speak to them, because you allow them to give their feelings. When they don't tell the truth, you're in there. You find them out and you speak to them so that they're exposed. I appreciate that, because I can't. And I want to know the truth as a voting person. I'm entitled to it as a citizen. And I'm grateful to you, very grateful to you.
Well, I have to say, we honestly did not plan that.
But I did.
We have a real professional behind the scenes here. So we're going to end. We're going to take this opportunity to end. And from my own point of view, I can't thank you both enough for being here, for giving us your insight. And is it the right moment to say that I hope it can be an annual event? Well, regardless. We have a little present for both of you, and I hope you will be seen around town often, carrying our bags. Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much, the two of you.